The first time I saw the midnight bus, I thought it was a ghost. It came down Main Street with its lights dimmed low, the sound of its engine softer than the crickets. The town was asleep. Even the neon sign at Mel's Diner had gone dark hours earlier. But there it was, gliding past the stop where no one ever waited. For months, I'd seen the new schedules tacked up at the factory, bold letters announcing new night route Z12, serving the city after dark. Most folks laughed when they saw it. "Who's gonna ride a bus at midnight?" they said. Ain't nobody up then except the dogs and the janitors. But I was one of those janitors. My name's Tom Calloway, 43 years old, and I'd been sweeping the same factory floor since 1958. By the time the new shift schedule rolled around, in the spring of '73, my car had given up its ghost, transmission shot, not worth the repair. I started walking home after midnight, 4 miles through the quiet back roads. It wasn't bad most nights, but on rainy ones, it felt like the whole world was made of puddles. So when I saw that sign about the midnight bus, I thought maybe, just maybe, someone up there remembered folks like me. The first week I didn't see it. The second week I caught a glimpse of headlights far off in the fog, but they passed without stopping. By the third week I almost gave up. Then one night I heard the hiss of brakes behind me. The driver leaned out the window, her face half in shadow. She couldn't have been more than 30, short brown hair, glasses, a smile that looked like it had seen a few hard winters, but still held steady. "You the Z12? I asked. "Sure am," she said. "But I wasn't expecting passengers tonight." "Well," I said, climbing aboard, "you've got one now." The bus was nearly empty, just the hum of fluorescent lights and a faint smell of coffee. I took a seat halfway down, and she closed the doors with a gentle sigh. As we rolled through town, I watched the familiar streets from a new angle. The grocery store's sign blinked between life and death. The post office stood dark, its flag hanging like it was tired. Everything looked softer somehow, less sharp, less proud. "You work nights?" she asked, eyes on the road. "Factory over on Jefferson. Been there 15 years. She nodded. "I drive all night. Different kind of factory, I guess. What's your name?" I asked. "Ruth." "Tom," I said. And just like that, we were no longer strangers. For the first few rides, it was just me and Ruth. Sometimes she played the radio low, country ballads and news bulletins that made the night feel longer. We didn't talk much at first, but there was comfort in the silence, two people awake in a sleeping world. Every so often she'd stop for someone new, a nurse heading home from St. Mary's Hospital, a boy with a guitar case too big for his frame, an old man in a male uniform who always tipped his cap. We were a small club of midnight travelers, people the daylight forgot. One night, as the rain came down hard, Ruth looked at me through the rearview mirror. "You ever notice," she said, "how this town looks kinder at night?" "Kinder?" I asked. She smiled. "Yeah, in the dark you don't see the cracks. Just the lights people leave on for each other." I thought about that for a while. The porch light I always left on, even though no one waited for me at home anymore. Maybe she was right. When the bus reached my stop, I hesitated before stepping off. "Thanks for the ride," I said. "Any time, Tom. Route Z12 runs every night, as long as someone needs it." I watched as she pulled away, the red taillights fading down Main Street like embers in the fog. For the first time in years, I didn't walk home feeling alone. I walked home knowing that somewhere out there, a little yellow bus was still moving through the dark, carrying whoever the world forgot. By the second week, I started recognizing faces. It surprised me how fast a handful of strangers can begin to feel familiar when you only ever see them under street lights. Each night around 12:30, the bus gathered us like loose pieces of a forgotten puzzle. No one talked much, but the rhythm of our stops, the way Ruth nodded at each of us in turn, made it feel like a ritual. There was Clara, a nurse from St. Mary's, who always sat by the window. Her white shoes were never white anymore. The city's dust lived in them. When she closed her eyes, her hands still twitched, as if they couldn't forget the weight of someone's pulse. Then there was Eddie, the boy with the guitar case. He said he played at the tavern on 4th Street, but I never saw anyone carry so many dreams in something so scratched. Every time he opened that case, the smell of old wood and cigarette smoke filled the air. Sometimes he'd hum under his breath, and even the bus seemed to slow down to listen. And Mr. Harris, the retired mailman who wore his uniform jacket long after retirement. Habit, he said once. But I think it was more than that. Maybe the jacket reminded him of when people still waved as he passed. We all had our reasons for being awake when others slept. And though no one said it out loud, the bus became our confession booth. Each ride was a small act of defiance, proof that we still had somewhere to go. One night, near the end of April, the rain returned. It came sideways off the Atlantic, tapping the roof like impatient fingers. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up. Ruth kept both hands on the wheel, eyes narrow, shoulders tense. "You ever think about quitting?" I asked. She laughed softly. "Every night. But then I remember somebody's always waiting at the next stop. That night, there was someone new waiting. A woman stood under the flickering lamp by the corner store. She held a paper bag to her chest, rain soaking through her coat. When she stepped onto the bus, she looked around as if she'd forgotten what warmth felt like. "Where you headed?" Ruth asked. "Anywhere past Elm Street," she whispered. No one questioned her. We all knew that tone, the voice of someone trying to outrun something invisible. She sat 2 rows behind me. At one turn, the paper bag slipped, and a stack of old photographs spilled out. Black and white faces, edges warmed soft. She gathered them quickly, but I caught a glimpse of one. A man in uniform smiling beneath a sky full of planes. I wanted to ask, but didn't. Some stories aren't ready to be told. As the weeks passed, the Z12 filled slowly. Not with noise, but with presence. The silence became comfortable, like an old jacket that fit everyone just right. We started bringing small things for the ride. A thermos of coffee, a newspaper, sometimes even a spare sandwich. Ruth began keeping a tin of mints on the dashboard. "For the night breath," she joked. Sometimes she'd talk about her father, a trucker who taught her to drive when she was 12. He used to say, "The road will teach you patience, or it'll break you." I guess I chose patience. Other nights we just listened to the rain, or to Eddie strumming soft chords that didn't need words. But the world beyond the bus didn't sleep kindly. One morning I overheard the foreman talking about cutting costs. "No more overtime. No more night crew," he said, like we were just extra noise in his schedule. That week, fewer riders boarded the Z12. The factory lights dimmed earlier, and the diner stopped staying open late. Even the streets felt heavier, as if the town was folding in on itself. Ruth didn't say anything, but I saw it in her eyes, the fear of disappearing routes. One night I asked her, "What happens if they shut the line down?" She glanced at me through the mirror. "Then we'll drive anyway," she said. "Someone has to keep the night moving." That same night, as we passed the empty lot by the river, the new woman, the one with the photographs, stood up suddenly. "Stop the bus," she said. Ruth pulled over without question. The woman stepped out into the rain, clutching her paper bag. For a long moment she just stood there, looking toward the dark water. Then she dropped something, one of the photographs, and let the wind take it. When she got back on, her face was wet, but not just from the rain. "Thank you," she whispered, sitting down again. "No one asked why." As we pulled away, Ruth looked at me and said quietly, "Most people never see the ones who keep the world turning at night. We don't ride to be seen, Tom. We ride so that something still moves while everyone else is standing still." I didn't answer. I just looked out the window at the puddles reflecting our headlights and realized she was right. The notice came on a Tuesday morning, printed in small, polite letters on gray paper. Effective May 1st, Route Z12 will be discontinued due to low ridership. Someone taped it to the factory. Bulletin board beside the schedule and the vending machine. By lunchtime, most of the men had walked past it without a glance. But for me, it felt like someone had shut a door I hadn't even realized I loved. That night I found Ruth at the end of the line, parked outside Mel's diner. The bus hummed low, engine idling, windows fogged. She was sipping coffee from a paper cup, her eyes fixed on nothing. "So it's true," I said, stepping aboard. She didn't look up. "Guess the night's too quiet for profit." There was a bitter laugh in her voice, the kind that hides behind tiredness. The same kind I'd used when the factory cut bonuses the year before. The same kind everyone used when they had no one left to blame. The final week felt heavier. The regulars still came, but our smiles were slower now, careful, like borrowed time. Eddie played softer. His songs lingered in the air like fog. Clara brought cookies one night and passed them around with trembling hands. Even Mr. Harris, who rarely spoke, tipped his hat to Ruth twice instead of once. No one mentioned the notice. We all pretended we hadn't seen it. But every stop, every turn, every hiss of the brakes felt like a countdown. On Thursday, rain hit hard again, maybe the worst storm of the year. I almost didn't go, but something in me couldn't stay home. I walked through sheets of water, shoes soaked through, until I saw those familiar headlights rounding the corner, cutting through the rain like two small promises. When I climbed aboard, Ruth just shook her head, smiling faintly. "Didn't think I'd see you tonight. Didn't think you'd be driving," she shrugged. "They haven't taken the keys yet. Only 3 of us rode that night, me, Ruth, and Clara. The rain was too heavy for the others." The wipers creaked back and forth, the sound like a metronome keeping time for a song we didn't know how to end. We passed the corner store, the post office, the closed diner. Everything shimmered behind the wet glass, the town blurred into soft colors and memories. At the stop by the river, Ruth pulled over. "Bus is empty enough," she said. "Mind if we stretch our legs?" We stepped into the rain, and for a moment it felt like standing inside a dream, the road glistening, the air electric. "I used to drive trucks through places like this," Ruth said, "during the war. Brought supplies. I thought when it ended the world would stay awake forever. Guess I was wrong." Clara tucked her hair under her hat. "People forget the ones who work when the lights go out," she said softly. "And when they forget," I added, "they stop seeing what keeps the world together." We stood there for a while, just listening to the rain against the bus roof. The river swelled, dark and alive. The town lights flickered across the water. When we got back inside, Ruth turned to us with a look that said she'd already decided something. "Tomorrow night's the last run," she said. "If you want to say goodbye, be here." I nodded. I didn't know what she meant, not really, but I knew I wouldn't to miss it for anything. Friday came fast. By midnight, a strange stillness hung over the town. The rain had stopped, but puddles glistened under the streetlights. When I reached the stop, the bus was already there, but it wasn't empty. Everyone was back. Eddie with his guitar, Clara in her wrinkled uniform, Mr. Harris in that old mail jacket. Even the woman with the photographs. She smiled when she saw me. "Didn't think you'd miss it," she said. "Wouldn't dream of it." "Well then," she said, "that last ride didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a story being told just for us, one where nothing needed to be fixed or hurried." Eddie played a tune no one recognized, something low and sad but warm. Outside, the reflection of our headlights shimmered on the water like another world waiting beneath. Then she reached up, switched off the engine, and let the bus go silent. The night swallowed us whole, but it wasn't empty. It was full of breath, of rain, of everything that ever mattered. We sat there until dawn began to show on the horizon. When the first light touched the windshield, Ruth turned the key again. The bus roared softly to life. "Guess that's that," she said, smiling through the reflection of morning. As we rolled back toward town, the sun caught the windows, painting the faces around me in gold. For a moment I thought, maybe this is what heaven looks like. A half-empty bus, an open road, and the quiet sound of people who understand. They shut down Brett Z 1-2 on the 1st of May. No ceremony, no announcement over the radio. Just a new schedule pinned up where the old one used to be. The words "Service Ended" printed in small final letters. I walked past it on my way to the time clock the same way I had for years. But that morning the factory floor sounded different. The machines still hummed, but the rhythm was off, like the town itself was learning how to breathe without its heartbeat. That night, when I finished my shift, I stood at the stop out of habit. The rain had stopped hours earlier, and the road shimmered beneath the moonlight, slick as glass. For a long time I waited, even though I knew no one was coming, but habits die slower than roots. About a week later, I saw Ruth again. She was sitting outside Mel's diner, still wearing her driver's jacket, still holding that same paper cup of coffee. "Didn't think you'd stay in town," I said. She smiled. "Didn't think the road would let me leave." We talked a while, about the riders, about how the nights felt emptier now. She said she'd applied for a daytime route, but it didn't feel right. "The sun's too loud," she said. "Can't hear people's stories in all that light." Then she handed me something, an old brass bus token, worn smooth by years of hands. "Keep it," she said, "for when you miss the noise that isn't noise." I didn't know what she meant then, but I do now. By June, life had found its patterns again. The factory ran quieter. The diners started closing early. The nurse from St. Mary's transferred to another hospital. Eddie moved to Nashville. Mr. Harris stopped coming out in the evenings. And me, I started walking home again. Same 4 miles, same empty roads. But something had changed. I began to notice things I hadn't before. The way the street lamps hummed like a soft tune. The smell of fresh asphalt after the rain. Even the faint echo of tires on wet pavement, like a memory trying to call my name. Some nights I could almost hear it. The low growl of the E12 somewhere beyond the trees, carrying ghosts through the fog. Maybe it was just the wind. Or maybe the road remembered too. One Friday night, a young man from the factory caught up to me on the walk home. "Hey, Mr. Calloway," he said. "You used to ride that midnight bus, right?" I nodded. "My uncle told me about it," he said. "Said it was for folks who didn't fit the day's shift." He laughed, but there was something wistful in his voice. Then he said, "They're thinking of bringing it back. Different name, different company, but same route." I stopped walking. "You're kidding." "No, sir. City council's talking about late-night service again. Not for profit this time. For people." And just like that, I felt the smallest spark of something, not quite hope, but close enough to touch. A month later, I went down to the bus yard on the edge of town. Most of the old fleet was gone, rusting quietly in the weeds. But tucked near the back was one familiar frame, faded yellow paint, cracked windshield, a missing mirror. Route Z12. The number was barely visible now, like it was hiding from time. I climbed up the steps, the same 3 creaky steps that had carried 100 quiet stories, and sat in the driver's seat. The smell was still there, coffee, dust, rain. I ran my hand along the steering wheel, cold and smooth, and for a moment I could almost hear her voice. "Somebody's always waiting at the next stop," I smiled. "Guess so, Ruth." They never did bring back the bus under that name. But every year, on the 1st of May, the town holds a small night fair, the Midnight Ride celebration. They set up lights along Main Street, play old songs, sell coffee and pie until dawn. No one really knows why it started. Most folks just say it's a tradition, but those of us who remember, we know. It's for the ones who kept the world turning when no one was watching. For the people who carried others home in the dark. For Ruth, for Eddie, for Clara, for all of us who found comfort in the sound of a bus engine humming softly through the night. Now, whenever I can't sleep, I take a walk down that same road. Sometimes the sky is clear, sometimes it's heavy with rain, and every so often I see headlights glinting far off in the distance, too slow for a car, too steady for chance. I stand there until they fade, listening, and in that stillness I realize the truth. They can end a route, they can erase a number, but they can't stop the road from remembering, because some roads aren't built on maps. They're built in people. And as long as we remember the sound of wheels in the dark, Route Z12 will keep on running, quietly, faithfully, through the heart of every small town that ever fell asleep, believing someone out there was still awake. If this story brought back a memory of long roads, quiet nights, or the sound of something that once kept you moving, then you already understand what this channel is about. Subscribe to Back When Stories, where every story is a reminder that time moves on, but the heart remembers. Because somewhere out there in the dark, there's still a light waiting at the next stop.